How strong was the Wall of Constantinople? For over 1,000 years, there was one wall that made the world tremble. Not the Great Wall of China, not the Berlin Wall, but a wall in a city that stood at the crossroads of two continents. A city that was the prize of the greatest conquerors in history. That city was Constantinople. And its wall? It wasn't just a pile of stone. It was a defensive monster that even the most brutal armies couldn't penetrate for more than a millennium. How could a wall endure for so long? Who built it? And why did almost no military force succeed in breaking through? We're about to uncover layer by layer of the fortification that shook the world. But first, picture this: wave after wave of invaders, armies from every corner of the globe. And yet every time they failed, all because of one thing: a wall, but not just any wall. This is the story of the wall that made history take a sharp turn. Constantinople, capital of the Byzantine Empire, the meeting point of Europe and Asia. This city was the last stronghold of the East. And like all important cities in history, it was under constant threat. But Constantinople had one unmatched advantage: its wall. A wall that didn't just stand, it fought against arrows, swords, even cannons. It witnessed the rise and fall of empires. It saw religions shift, cultures evolve, and technologies advance. But for more than 1,000 years, the wall stood, unshaken. The world changed. But this wall remained fiercely loyal. Why was this wall so incredibly strong? The answer wasn't just in stone and mortar. It was in intelligence, planning, and fear. The Wall of Constantinople wasn't just built to hold enemies back. It was built to crush their hopes. 3 layers. Yes, 3. Each one designed to make attackers think twice, then 3 times, then give up. A wide moat in front, an outer wall in the middle, and a towering inner wall behind it. As if saying, if you can take the first, congratulations, 2 more to go. Even during total war, the wall had a rapid repair system, as if the city was always preparing for doomsday. But the most astonishing fact? All of this was built more than 1,600 years ago. Many tried to break it. The Huns, Arab armies, Russian forces, even European crusaders, all returned empty-handed. The wall wasn't just a physical barrier. It was a symbol of endurance. But like all legends, it had an end. Constantinople eventually fell, but not because the wall was weak. It was because the world had changed. Weapons had changed. Yet for more than 1,000 years, one wall redefined what defense meant. And even today, we're still talking about it. What made this wall so extraordinary? Why don't modern cities build defenses like this anymore? Or are we still learning from the Wall of Constantinople in new forms? We're about to dig deeper into the reasons it was built, into the architectural genius behind it, into every siege that failed. After the Roman Empire split into 2 parts, the eastern half, known as the Byzantine Empire, inherited the city of Constantinople. Its location was incredibly strategic, at the crossroads of Europe and Asia, where 2 continents, 2 cultures, and 2 major powers collided. But behind the advantage of such a prime location lay a dangerous truth. Everyone wanted this city. From the north came the relentless push of barbarian tribes from Eastern Europe. From the south, Arab forces began expanding their reach. From the east, various minor powers launched constant raids. And from the west, Latin Christian forces had their own ambitions toward this holy city. In short, Constantinople was surrounded by history. Emperor Theodosius II, who came to the throne at a very young age, inherited a kingdom under constant threat. But he had one vision. If Byzantium was to survive, Constantinople must remain untouched. So in 413 AD, he ordered the construction of the Theodosian walls. Not just a single wall, but a layered defense system unlike anything the world had seen before. But this construction wasn't just about physical defense. It was psychological warfare. The world needed to understand Constantinople would not fall easily. And the Byzantine people, from stone, masons to generals, shared one belief. This wall was their life or death. There was a collective mentality that if the wall fell, their entire world would fall with it. What made the Theodosian walls unique was the mindset behind them. They weren't just built to stop enemies, they were built to crush their hope. Even before an army reached the city, they would already feel defeated just by looking at the wall. But the real question is, how did they build it? With the limited technology of the 5th century, how did Byzantium create a defense system that would last over 1,000 years? Imagine standing before a wall nearly 20 meters tall, 5 meters thick, not just one layer, but 3. That was the Theodosian walls, the most complex defensive structure of the ancient world. This was no mere stone wall. It was a masterpiece of military engineering, built over 1,600 years ago. Its structure had 3 main components. First, a trench 20 meters wide and deep, acting as the initial barrier and trap. Any force daring to cross it would immediately be under fire from the outer wall. Second, the outer wall itself stood 8 meters tall, with watchtowers spaced only about 50 meters apart, allowing every inch of wall to be monitored and defended. And third, the most impressive part, the inner wall, towering 12 to 15 meters high, 5 meters thick, with 20-meter-high defense towers rising at regular intervals. From these towers, archers, crossbowmen, and eventually gunmen could rain down fire without exposing themselves. These created deadly layers a foe would have to survive before even getting close to the heart of the city. What made it even more astonishing was the material and construction technique. Bricks and limestone were arranged using the opus mixtum method, a mix of large and small stones interlaid, with red brick layers to make the structure more flexible during earthquakes. Drainage systems, secret tunnels, and emergency access points were built into the walls, allowing them to withstand sieges for months or even years. But it wasn't just about brute strength. The technology was advanced for its time. They had caeroballistra, type of compact ballista used to launch massive arrows from towers. Boiling oil and hot sand were used to stop climbers. They even developed fast communication between towers, using flags by day and fire signals at night. What made the architecture truly powerful wasn't just its strength, but the message it sent. When enemies saw this wall, they understood this was no ordinary city. This was a symbol of Byzantine power, engineering, and unshakable resolve. Yet, no matter how strong a wall is, history always tests through time, ambition, and evolving technology. So who was the first to try and breach it? And how did that end? Siege after siege. Imagine standing before a wall so high, so thick, and so terrifying that thousands of soldiers would think twice before advancing. This is the Wall of Constantinople. For more than 1,000 years, this wall was not just a stone barrier, it was a wall between civilizations. Yet not everyone was intimidated. History records time and time again, enemies came, laid siege, and tried to bring down this massive structure, but they failed. Behind the silence of these ancient stones lie the greatest siege stories in human history. And here's the foreshadow. Even the strongest armies eventually learned that brute force alone wasn't enough. In 626 AD, a joint force of Persians and Avars attempted to shake Constantinople from both land and sea, Avars on the ground, Persians from the water. But the Theodosian walls refused to fall. Armed with the best siege engines of their time, the Avars pounded gate after gate. Yet rain of arrows, boiling oil, and the sheer courage of the city's defenders turned the tide. The invaders retreated, battered and shamed. Then came the Arabs. Between 674 and 678 AD, the Umayyad Caliph sent both naval and ground forces to take this sacred city. This wasn't just about power. For them, it was a spiritual jihad. But once again, Constantinople's walls stood their ground. The Byzantines deployed their secret weapon, Greek fire, a burning liquid that ignited on water. Enemy ships were swallowed in flames. The siege failed. The Arabs returned home empty-handed. Another attempt followed in 778 AD. Omar ibn Abdul Aziz's forces brought a larger army, but a brutal winter, starvation, and disease killed more soldiers than the Byzantine arrows. Once again, the walls prevailed. Siege after siege, the Rus in 860, the Crusaders in 1203, and many more. Even when attackers succeeded in entering the city, like in the Fourth Crusade, it wasn't because the walls fell. It was betrayal from within. But then, the world began to change. Cannons were invented. Gunpowder became the weapon of choice. Technology slowly caught up with the once untouchable walls. And the payoff? The Wall of Constantinople was indeed mighty. But history proves that its greatest strength was not in its stones, but in the resolve of those who defended it. Still, the question remains, how long can a wall stand against the tide of a changing world? In the next segment, we'll witness the moment the world changed forever, the moment the invincible wall finally fell. Segment 5, The Turning Point, when the walls fell. The year was 1453. The world stood witness to the end of an era. Mehmed Secca, just 21 years old, led the Ottoman army in the greatest siege Constantinople had ever seen. But this was no ordinary siege. It was a battle between the past and the future. Sultan Mehmed brought with him 80,000 soldiers, facing only 7,000 defenders inside the city. But numbers weren't the only factor. Mehmed had a weapon the Theodosian walls had never encountered before: massive cannons. The basilica, an enormous cannon engineered by a Hungarian named Orban, could hurl 500 kilogram stone projectiles over a kilometer away. Each blast shook the ancient walls like never before. The walls cracked, but the people of Constantinople repaired them each night. Day after day, the assault intensified. The outer wall fell, then the middle section, and finally, on May 29, 1453, the final attack began. The elite Janissary troops stormed through the breach. The city fell. Emperor Constantine X died fighting, and the walls that had held off the world for over a millennium finally crumbled. But it wasn't just stones that fell. It was the end of the Roman Empire and the dawn of a new world. When Constantinople fell, the Western world mourned. They called it a tragedy, a loss, the painful end of a great civilization that had lasted over 1,000 years. But was it truly a defeat? Picture this, from the ruins of that ancient city. A new era was born. Sultan Mehmed didn't just conquer, he rebuilt. He transformed the city into the capital of a new empire, Istanbul, the heart of the Ottoman Empire that would thrive for centuries. And the walls? Some parts still stand today, as reminders, not just of strength, but of limitation. Perhaps it's not about victory or defeat, but about a change that could not be stopped. On one hand, Constantinople fell. On the other, the spirit of innovation, technology, and cultural exchange flourished. This fall marked the end of the Middle Ages and opened the door to the Renaissance. Scholars and philosophers fleeing Constantinople carried ancient manuscripts into Europe. From that destruction came a rebirth. We can choose to see it as a loss, but we might better understand it as the evolution of history. Constantinople may have fallen, but its legacy never truly vanished. Walls can crumble, cities can fall, but ideas and spirit can live on, as long as there's someone willing to listen. From the first brick laid by human hands to the first cannon blast that shook the earth, the walls of Constantinople weren't just fortifications. They were symbols of fear, of pride, of hope, and ultimately, of transformation. Within their ruins lies more than history. There's a story of how the old world gave way to the new, how tradition clashed with innovation, and how even the strongest fortress can fall when time decides it's enough. History isn't meant to be worshipped. It's meant to be learned. So we understand that strength isn't just about walls, but the resilience behind them. The walls of Constantinople have long collapsed, but their lesson can still build us, not with stone, but with understanding. If this video gave you a new perspective, don't let this story end with you. Hit that like button and leave your thoughts below. Was the fall of Constantinople truly an end, or the beginning of something greater? And if you love historical storytelling like this, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next great story that shaped our world.